The next speaker is Peter Massey, and he's held a variety of leadership roles in the gas distribution and transmission operations. And now as a director of the gas distribution transformation in National Grid, he is currently leading the design and implementation of a new United Kingdom gas distribution operating model. Peter will discuss how National Grid transformed its operation model, focusing on the deployment of an integrated suite of new systems in the United Kingdom gas distribution business. He will also discuss what the benefits are to the customer, the increases in operational efficiency, and how lessons that have been learned are being applied to the transformation in the year to come in 2012. Peter? Sure.
The lights up, please. As well as all that stuff, I'm actually going to talk about change. So the first thing I'd like you to do is to experience change you weren't expecting. Could I get you all to stand up and move to the seat immediately on your left? Yep. You've got less than 10 seconds to complete this exercise. Okay, thank you for that. This is the biggest audience I've done that for. And the reason I did it was for you to experience something that you weren't particularly planning, might feel a bit uncomfortable, and as my colleague down here, the first thing you do when you're asked to change a very simple thing, when you've been given instruction to go left one seat and there isn't a seat there, you go, sorry, I can't comply. So in a large organization like National Grid, when you get people to change even small things, they tend to be very aggressive in resisting. That's the normal reaction. And there's challenges to that. So introducing lots of change into an organization, particularly large organizations, is a big thing. I'm going to talk about a number of things going through this agenda. First thing, I'm going to put a couple of slides up to describe who National Grid is, for those who don't know. This slide's full of lots of facts and data, but I think the most important thing to pick out is that we are principally a gas and electric company. We're not a retailer, we're not a producer. We sit nicely in that middle spot between people who generate energy and people who use energy. Another way of looking at it is this diagram here, where you can see we're nicely wedged in the middle, trying to make sure that all that energy, and particularly the new forms of energy that are being created, are actually transported to the people who use it, you and I, in our homes. In the UK, we're investing over 22 billion just connecting new sources of energy. Massive amount of investment. I want to also take you on a bit of a journey of the program that I manage. And I'll take you back in time to the end of 2008 and early 2009. It's a bit deja vu because we were in a credit crunch and a credit crisis at that time. And nearly 3 years later, I think we're still in that position, aren't we? But at that point, if you looked at our business, we were a former public service. We've been private for nearly 20 years. And we'd actually gone through an awful lot of change as an organization. But all of that change had been forced on us, forced by regulators, forced by changes in legislation. None of it was actually generated from within, focusing on things that we wanted to do as a company. We had grown our business, and our business in the US is exactly the same, primarily through acquisition. So if you wanted to come for a reference site for any IT system, we had it. We had over 70 different systems mashed together in a spaghetti fashion and ran our business as though it was 30 or 40 different companies, not one company. We also, in the UK, introduced competition into the distribution business, which only exists in a couple of countries around the world, which meant that our revenues were set by comparison with our performance with our competitors. And we spent about 18 months, 2 years, supporting those new businesses getting going They created greenfield, brand new systems, and we ended up with a legacy of stranded IT for what was effectively 8 networks in the UK, but only funded for 4. We also had a pretty disengaged workforce, people that were not turned on to helping us. We weren't used to collaboration, particularly in large IT scale programs. We spent large sums of money, tended to overrun, and then not deliver what the people wanted. You may have heard that before. And we knew we were moving into a new world in our regulated world where the customer and innovation and making big changes to the way that the market operated in the UK were really important. And we were in a position where you looked at our business and we were behind the curve on virtually every indicator you could think of. The bottom graph there actually shows our customer satisfaction performance. So out of 4 of the 8 UK networks, we were ranked 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. I'll mention the 70-odd systems. 40 of those were actually core to our operation every day. We had 18 different systems you had to put the address into to make our business work. You couldn't scrape it, it didn't translate. So as you imagine, every time we put in an address, the way you spelt street, whether you put a full stop, capitals, or anything else, when we looked to pull those 2 things together, it was a horrible mess. So when we started the program, this is probably the one slide that I've used the longest, and it's been rooted in our program since the start. It was really a 2-stage program. One was a major IT investment, and the other was a major change program. The goals at the top of the chart there really summarize the things that we agreed at the start of the program were fundamental to our success. We needed to put customer back into our language. We'd removed it as a distributor and let the retail organizations in the UK own that word. But we deal with over 3 million calls a year from the general public, and we respond to about 1.5 million actual visits into customer houses every year. But we didn't use the word customer in our language. Because of all the spaghetti of systems and processes we had, our life for our people, even if they wanted to do a good job, was really hard. So it was important that we simplified how we operated our business. We had to be more competitive, more productive in the things we did. That was a given. And also, because of this new regulatory regime, our ability to be more transparent and report our performance to our regulators was moving up, and the barrier, the bar was being lifted all the time. Just some of the scale of the investment and the scale of change, just so you get your eye into it. We've invested over 200 million in this IT system, which is a massive amount of money. It's actually more money than we've ever spent on a capital project before. So all the investment we make in pipelines and things like that every year, we've never spent more than that on one particular project. We had over 40 million data items in all those different systems that I talked about that we had to pull together and decide which one was the master, which one was a slave, which was the right data, which was not. But interestingly, because we started to integrate those systems in ways that we'd never done before, we had to create 13 million new records of relationships between that data that we didn't have before. On the change journey side, we've got about 4,500 employees in the gas distribution part of the business. But actually, as you'll see on a later slide, we've actually touched about 6,000 people because we've had to go back to them in a number of releases several times over the journey. This is a simplified view of what the landscape now looks like. From those 70-odd systems, we now fundamentally have 4. So we have an SAP system that enables us to capture information about our customers through a call center. We have an SAP hub in the middle that stores the majority of the data and asset records. And we have mobile applications out into our field through 3G and GSM to laptop devices in the vehicle. And each of those vehicles are GPS enabled as well. But interestingly, for those who've been connected with SAP before, and I've said this at SAP conferences, so they won't mind me saying, it's not very user-friendly. So we actually made the decision up front that the majority of our users would see Esri, Cyclo, or Click as their operating tools. That was the interface they were going to see. I'm one of the people, like a number of the people in the room here, who are lucky enough to speak a bit of geography. It's in our language. There's a little chip inside our head that understands where we are at any time when we're walking around. We can park cars. It's got nothing to do with we're male or female, but we can do it because we understand where the relationship is between objects. When you start to work in an engineering field, and particularly a distribution business that we're in, there's lots of people like that. But actually getting them to think in that way is actually quite a challenge. So what I wanted to do was to give those tools and get people used to using a geospatial way of doing everyday tasks so it became second nature. I'll skip over that one. So a lot of the stuff we've done in our engineering back office is using and trying to unlock the knowledge about our business using GIS tools. The graphs you got in front of you here actually show you failures on us meeting standards of service jobs. And we're actually able to plot that and do analytics on it in a geospatial way that we weren't able to do before, because we would naturally have listed them in log tables and lookup tables using standard BI reports. This enabled us to ask questions about the demographics, the travel patterns, the social mix of people in those areas, and was there any correlation between those things that meant that we hit standards or missed standards in different ways. We never looked at our business that way before. It also meant that we were actually able to change some of the travel patterns and job sequencing of those emergency works. And we were able, after probably about 6 weeks of post-go live, to move our performance in terms of hitting the right travel pattern from 54% to 99%. So we're now able to actually predict when we're going to get to site with a 99% accuracy, compared with 54% when we started. That makes a massive difference to us, and that was partly because of the way that we looked at things geospatially rather than just in performance league tables. The other thing I've put in, because it's an Esri conference, is some of the innovations we put in with the Esri Arc FM product. A lot of the utilities in the UK, and I don't know what it's like in Europe broadly, but actually getting a brand new connection, a service connection, be it water, electricity or gas, is a painful process if you're a customer. To give you some idea how painful it is, 1 in 10 of the jobs we do, we get a written complaint. 1 in 10. So every 10th job we got, somebody would be so frustrated, they would actually put pen to paper or an email and send it to us. It's partly because that old process at the top there is actually all paper-based. It's manual handoffs, it's office people, phone people, surveyors, teams, all trying to get together in a very short, narrow window and serve a customer's need. And that gas connection is normally a very small part of a building development or an extension somebody's putting on their house. And partly that was because we traditionally had a process that started from a database and went out. What we tried to do with this new process is actually use geospatial information to do the designs up front, pre-enable that information to be available in the field, and then based on the customer picking an appointment, set the job card running in SAP. So I'm going to go through a couple of slides here. I'm not going to spend too long on it, and if anybody's interested, you can see me afterwards, but just run through what that looks like. Some of you may know this already, but to actually take a map and draw a polygon on it to say this is the area I'm interested in doing a design, that's the start now of our jobs. That's what we do. It very quickly identifies the pipe or the asset that we've got and can scroll on the new design into that pipe and look to the affected properties around it, knowing the type of work that we need to do, by bringing in layers that are both available within our company and layers that we bought in commercially from outside. That then enables us to actually package up a schedule of work and send that as a service into SAP to get work orders produced. So it's turned the normal workflow that we had completely 180 degrees. We'll also then be able to share this information with the field teams. It starts to still get produced in a map physical print-off. So the teams that go out are doing large projects still use big AO printed sheets. but they're produced in a local office straight off the design that's done 100 miles away. The other thing that we invested in is we put in what we called data capture technicians, who are qualified mini surveyors with Trimble-type devices linked to this design and linked to the space on the ground. So when they actually go out and trace and do the cartography, now all they have to do, rather than creating a brand new scheme on the field, they just look for changes from the original design. If there's no changes, they can literally click a button and it gets updated into our GIS. That's cut our average time for data recording from just short of 6 months down to 18 days. Dramatic improvement in our safety and our performance and the efficiency that we're putting in. Just to give you some idea of, well, this is a very small example. I actually did the math this morning. We actually replace our gas mains in the UK on a scale that's equivalent to laying a pipe from Madrid to Barcelona 3 times a year. So over 100 miles a month we replace. So you can imagine if you scale this up to that level of workload, it's going to make dramatic improvements in our performance. But this is the bit I wanted to talk about, and the reason I got you to imagine and experience that change at the start. We realized that putting in technology was actually no longer going to be a limiting factor. Up to this point, a lot of the reason large companies like ours actually got to do an integrated solution was because we had so much data, there wasn't technology out there to process it. And actually getting companies to integrate their solutions and do that in a way that was properly speedy just didn't happen. Technology is no longer a problem. Getting people to change and adapt new working practices was the challenge that we set ourselves, or we knew we were going to be faced. So we've put a lot of effort into both the upfront design and engagement with our employees. The video that's playing now, just some of the clips of what's been going on and continues to go on for the last, it's gone on for the last 2 years and will continue for the next year of the program. A lot of interactive sessions. We created things called design theatres. Sounds fun, and it was. Some bits of it were really fun because we wanted people to enjoy the change. We didn't want them to think that it was something that was going to really hurt them. We wanted them to embrace the new technology and come up with ideas of how we could take it to the next level, rather than, as we traditionally had, a resistance and a wall of resistance. So we actually got a lot of our own people to become those ambassadors. You'll see on this clip, a lot of the people who are standing up and talking here were the most skeptical supervisors, frontline managers that we had in our organization, that we actually put in the hotspot, put on the limelight, and got them trained and able to present a compelling story to their people and start to believe in a new form of engagement. The other thing we did, and Richard here from Esri UK will be testimony to this, is we actually stretched our suppliers in terms of their thinking as well. A lot of the challenges when you go into large organizations is being able to cope with the scale of change that we wanted to put in the time frame we set ourselves. So we had to get more capability within Esri to actually build at the pace and the speed that we wanted to. And that meant the efforts that we put in terms of collaboration between a number of the technical suppliers and our business to extract knowledge of what needed to be fixed and then come up with the technical solutions of how that was going to be done was a really important part of the process that we've been through. And I'd commend the effort that Esri have put in with us to actually really change the way that we've been able to deliver collaborative projects. One of the things here that's coming up now is a collaboration hub. We set these up as a concept, and we're not the first company to have done this. But the impact it's had on our organization is quite dramatic. We now are constructing these in our enduring business all around our different sites. So it's an environment where people can actually form in small groups of 2 or 3, or large groups of 30 or 40 or more, to actually brainstorm process improvements, issues that are not working out, and actually tackle some of the behavioral issues that people are seeing that's stopping us being successful. Some other sort of indicators of the scale of change, because I said the transformation in our world was not just about IT. we understood that there was a balance between putting in the hardware, as we call it, all of the physical structures. We've closed offices, migrated teams together, formed new roles, put in new governance and new MI that's come out. But we also had to do a lot of stuff to change those behaviors, those incentives, those leadership skills that weren't at the level that we needed them to be successful. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these, but you can see in terms of our transformation, which is ongoing as we speak, we're touching every aspect of what forms our culture, every aspect of the deep-rooted things that we needed to change in our business. Because without that, all the investment in technology and all the linkages that we wanted to make would have been a waste of time, frankly. This is where we are on our journey. It's 3 major releases of software and 3 major organizational changes. We're through the biggest part of that, or touch wood, we will be this weekend. We take the technical deployment of the 3rd release this weekend. And as you can see, in each of those waves, we've affected more and more people in our organization. And in each of the waves, we've gone back and enhanced the applications or the way of working or the processes for the people in the early releases as well. This is some of the interesting bit, actually. What have we learnt? Some of the first stuff is about click schedule rather than Esri, but I think it's interesting just to pass on some of those things. Our dispatches, the way that we actually set people to work every day, you could argue was a bit like a telephone answering system. So a member of the public would come in and say, I smell gas in my house. They would take the address details, they would pass it on to a dispatcher. The dispatcher would phone a supervisor who would say which team to send the job to, and then the dispatcher would phone the team and send the job to them. Very clunky, slow process. When we introduced a new auto-scheduling system, all of that was done for them. So those individuals who were effectively taking messages and passing messages on then had to start to think in a more of a planner's way about whether the schedule was full and efficient, whether it was overloaded because there was more work coming in than they thought, and actually think an afternoon or a day or even a week ahead to replan that work. We found a number of our people couldn't make that grade. It was effectively a completely different job to the one they'd had before. So by actually bringing in technology, and the same things apply in that point I've made at the bottom there about GIS, you can't assume because you think like that other people in your organization do as well. And there will be gaps in your capability if you go down this way that you'll need to fill with new skills and new people. Interesting one on the skill sets piece. The way that Click works, it knows where the teams are, it knows what their skills are, it knows which shift pattern they're on, and it knows where the work is. So it makes an assessment of who's the best person to actually send to that job. When you need 2 teams, 2 guys to work together to complete a work, it makes that decision combined, puts them together at the same location. We found that 2 of our teams in the pilot area legally couldn't be in the same van together. One of them had had an affair with the other person's wife, and that meant legally they couldn't be more than 50 meters, or they couldn't be closer than 50 meters together. And of course, the system didn't know that, so on the first day of operation, what did it do? It put them together in the same van. The other thing that's important on this chart more than anything else is all the everyday behaviors are really important in being successful. When you put in a system that you think is doing what your business does already, it exposes every small detail, everything. So one of the things that we had is that we had starts work at 8 a.m. in the morning. That's what their contract said. That's what they did. And most people arrived on site at 8 o'clock. Doesn't mean they turn their computer on at 8 o'clock. It means they're available for work, they do their vehicle check, or they're doing something else, but they're available at work. And of course, when you tell a system that everybody starts at 8 o'clock, it assumes they're there ready to accept a job. Their laptop's turned on, they're fired up, ready to go. So we had to put new union rules in, new disciplines in terms of tracking information to make sure that when the person said they were starting work at a certain time of the day, they actually were logged on, ready to go. And we didn't know that that was going to be an issue until we went live. I'll finish on this, really, because I don't want to take too long. But the most important thing that I get out of this project that I'm managing is that it's that perfect mix of, I'm a bit of a gadget person. I'm the first person to buy an iPad 2, my new camera gear and all that sort of thing. So having some of this exciting technology at your fingertips is fantastic. To be in an industry where you can actually see now that the technology is no longer a limiter, it actually just opens up more possibilities. When we start connecting some of our feeds from our customers on Twitter into a geospatial background and understand how they're feeling about the job as it's happening, and we can go and react to that very quickly, that's all really exciting stuff to me. But also seeing the change in our organization, our field teams, the way they're behaving and feeling like they're being invested in, how our middle managers are actually starting to grow in terms of their ability to lead people that we'd never spent any time on, and actually even at our executive level, being able to tell them new stories about what our real performance is and show them action plans that are not just pie in the sky, but actually action-based and focused on delivering real results, because you have now got the absolute evidence rather than guesswork about what's going on. I've mentioned people a lot of times. People are really important in making successful change work. And the important thing is that it's not based on one person being successful. You need an army of people who can actually continue to pass that message on as you go. So, right people, right process, right technology, and a bit of risk-taking. So I hope this works. Thank you very much.